Oh, look at these. These here, wild muscadine grapes. They're delicious. Excellent thing to forage down here in the south, but do your research before you do any foraging. Make sure that they are what you think they are. Make sure you know how to test. Stay safe, but man, these are good. These ones are a little past their prime though. Hey everybody, welcome back. So today we're out here working on building up a food forest in my property. Thought I'd show you what I'm doing. Let's check it out. Okay, so what we're looking at here is the beginnings of my food forest. I have a separate garden area, but as far as a food forest goes, we're just getting started on building that up. As you can see, I have a few trees in place already. We've got a couple Barbados cherries there. We've got a macadamia in the back. We got a strawberry tree here in the front. There's a mango in the pot over there. Elderberry over there. There's an orange tree that's mature. And then we have a fig. We have a jaboticaba, a couple of soursops. There's a strawberry tree, and we have a couple banana trees. All right, so I'm just getting started with building this forest up. And the first thing most of you will probably notice is it doesn't look anything like a forest, right? Because there's grass all over the ground. That's not a forest. Truth is that I am doing this the totally wrong way. The right way to do this would be to tear up all of the grass, bring in some soil, do some amendments, maybe bring in some wood chips, then set up all your layers, your vining layers, your herbaceous layers, put in your trees then. I mean, that would be the right way. Guess what? I'm not doing it that way. That's a story of my life, right? Because I don't do it the right way. Just so long as it gets done, that's all that matters. So here's my strategy, and believe me, this is not the way you want to go, but if you're already going there, then there we go. So I'm gonna put in the trees, I'm gonna gild around each of those trees, sheet mulching, to bring in some of those other layers. And then once we have all those trees gilded around, that's gonna close off the area that actually is grass remaining, so that there's some pathways that go through, and then I can either just mow those for a while until the thing starts to establish, or I can tear up the grass in those small little areas and put in something else for a pathway, and let the forest then take over as it matures. This is gonna be a long-term project, a work in progress. It's gonna take several years, I'm sure. But I wanted to get these trees in right away because they take so long to start to produce, especially the nut trees that I'm going to be putting in. So for today's project, I just have a couple of trees that need to get in the ground. They've been in the pots too long. We have a mango, we have an elderberry, so we'll get those in the ground. Before we get started with that though, I have a dad joke for you. Be warned, but this is an appropriate time for this one. You remember back in the day when you'd go to the gas station and you go to get air in the tire and it was free? Now it's $1.50. You know what caused that? Inflation. I know it's terrible, but I love it. Let's get started. Okay, little honesty here. My name is not Dr. Green Thumb, so don't expect any sage advice from me here about planting trees. I will tell you what I do know though. That's an elderberry over there. I know that the elderberry is going to want a little bit more acidic soil. I know my soil is kind of right about neutral. The native soil is a little bit acidic, but I'm going to be putting some garden soil mixed with some compost in there, and I know that that's pretty close to neutral. So I'm going to be adding some soil acidifier to it. I'm also going to put in a little bit of mycorrhizal to help things get kicked off. But I also read that these things don't want really any kind of fertilizer probably in the first year, especially right after planting or during planting. So we won't be putting any fertilizer in the ground. Otherwise, that's about all the advice I got for you. And if my hole looks, you're looking at that hole saying, well, that doesn't look like a fresh hole. You're right, you're right. I was digging it about a month ago and got rained out. And of course, then life gets in the way, couldn't get back to it. So here we are today. So this here is the mycorrhizal that I use. I got this off of Amazon. I used this on a couple of my banana trees as I was transplanting them, and they seem to have done phenomenally with this stuff in there. So I'm optimistic about putting it in here. So we're just going to sprinkle a little in there. we'll sprinkle a little on the actual root ball when we take the plant out of the pot. Hopefully give it a good jump start. So we're a little bit root bound there. Nothing horrible, it's not all around it, but we'll loosen this up a little bit. Now, because this tree is going to grow into a pretty decent sized tree, it's not going to be monstrous, but it'll probably shrink or sink down into the ground just a little bit. So I'm going to plant it just about even, maybe a little bit above grade, so that we give it an opportunity for it to settle into the soil. All right, so the tree is in the ground, and as I said, it's just about a ½ inch to an inch or so above the grade, what I want to be the finished grade. And so that will, in theory, allow the tree to settle a bit as it grows. Cat wants to play. We put a little soil acidifier in there to help hopefully bring down the pH to where it wants to be. Another trick that I picked up on is that when you've got your plant and you think you know where you want to put it, if you got time and you leave it just sit without putting it in the ground, but just leave it in the pot and sit where you think you want it to go and see how it responds to that environment. This one, I thought I wanted it in another spot over there, left it sit there for a couple of weeks, and the leaves on the top started to dry out and crinkle up, so it obviously was not liking the intensity of the sun or the time that it was getting in full sun over there. Elderberry, from what I read, should want full sun, but this one does not seem to. So I moved it over here where it's getting partial shade, and it's done much better. So hopefully that's the sign that this is where it wants to live. Now, of course, people online are going to come out and tell me I've done everything wrong and that I'm an idiot, and that's why I'm telling you right up front. Yep, I'm an idiot, don't know what I'm doing, but reading and trying to learn and trying to get out there and do something, I'm sure I'm making mistakes along the way, but I got to it before you did. Okay, creme de la creme on this whole thing. Of course, we got to water it. Might as well use some good water from our fish pond that's full of nutrients and healthy bacteria and all of that to get this thing kicked off. Here we go. All right, time to get the mango in the ground, and I know you're thinking, hey man, different shirt, what gives? Same day, I promise you, that is life down here in Florida. When you want to work outside in the summer, plan to go through 2 or 3 sets of clothes during the day. It's just part of the life. So, got our hole prepared. We got some of our garden soil and compost and acidifier mix in the ground. We'll throw our mycorrhizal in there, get the mango in. Basically, the only thing different that I'm doing with the mango is I know they don't like wet feet. They need, well draining soil, which this is all sugar sand down here, and then some of my soil there, a couple inches of that. This stuff drains great, but they don't like wet feet, so I've got it in a little bit higher spot. I know that they need full sun. This particular spot will get maybe an hour or 2 of the day where it's a little bit shaded out, but we've got a good 8 hours for the rest of the day where it's going to get full sun, so we'll be good here. Now, the mango is a grafted tree. Right here you can see where the graft had been done, and so we definitely want to make sure that as we're putting this into the ground that you don't ever want to put this graft portion below the surface of the ground. Obviously we've got a few inches here, but we're going to still do the same thing we did before. We're going to come up to just about maybe a ½ inch to an inch below the surface, below the top here, with our grade level, so that way the tree can settle. We have no risk of ever having an issue of being too high towards our graft line there. We want to make sure that as we're putting this in, just push it down a little bit. You're not trying to super compact it, but we do want to get any air bubbles out of there, air pockets I should say. Okay, so it's just a ½ inch to an inch or so above the grade level right there to where the trunk starts to come out of the ground. That will make sure that this can settle. Water's not going to be running back into the tree. It's going to come around into this area here where it'll actually get to the roots where they're trying to reach out. And you'll notice that I've got the sand that I took out of the hole kind of built up this wall around, and that will just help to create a well here to hold the water in when I water it. And so we're going to do that. We're going to water it, and then the last thing we got to do is get some mulch down on these trees. All right, so the newly planted trees are mulched up, they're watered, they're good to go. So I'm gonna cut this video short here. I was hoping to get to talking a little bit more about the food forest plan, but this just got to be going too long. So I hope that you guys found it interesting or maybe helpful. I'm sure there's gonna be lots of suggestions about what I could have done better planting these trees. There's a million ways to plant trees. I'm always open for constructive criticism. Please leave any comments or questions you got down below. Thanks again. Bye-bye.